1968, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है। नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश। Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha, in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company is mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and the people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पर खेलने, परफेक्ट क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं। वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय, तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
दिखता है।
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार प्योर स्टील मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत GSW सीमेंट के साथ। GSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस। कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार GSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। GSW पेंट्स, think beautiful.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। जरूर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम। आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwati Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha, in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Bhushan Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and the people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी बार खेलने की, परफेक्ट क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस सुंदरता सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है। ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार प्योर स्टील मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का था एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ और सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत GSW सीमेंट के साथ। GSW सीमेंट द लीडर्स चॉइस। कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार GSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। GSW पेंट्स, think beautiful.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our Today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। जरूर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है। नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम। आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and immeasurable presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha, in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company is mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and the people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी बार खेलने की, परफेक्ट क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं। वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
दिखता है।
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या?
ये GSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार प्योर स्टील मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का होता एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत GSW सीमेंट के साथ। GSW सीमेंट द लीडर्स चॉइस। कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार GSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड एक ही प्राइस पर। GSW पेंट्स, think beautiful.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 million global enterprise. Our today has built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान। अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Bhushan Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company is mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
पिच पर ताकत लंबी बार खेलने की परफेक्ट क्वालिटी टेस्ट मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की जो देते हैं आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा GSW कलर ऑन प्लस सुंदर छत सालों साल
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये GSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार योर स्टील मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
JSW सीमेंट के साथ JSW सीमेंट द लीडर्स चॉइस। कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, नीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस
Okay, sure.
And if they can't join in, the present people will have more time to speak, which is a joyous opportunity in any case. No one is complaining.
Okay.
Okay. On behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I extend a warm welcome to all of you on day 2 and session 21 of the Partnership Summit. The theme, as you all know, is Digitisation and the Future of Jobs, the learnings from COVID. It's a privilege to welcome each one of you who's distinguished from across the globe. We are talking to people from Tokyo to Switzerland to the Republic of Korea to Delhi, Stockholm, the world over. In a rapidly technologically innovative and transformative world, the COVID crisis has accelerated the pace of change in technology. And sometimes we marvel as to how the human race has responded to the crisis. From the initial shock and crisis, we have established a new normal, or what some people say is the extra normal, because I think humanity per se is adaptive to anything that threatens its existence. Welcoming our office colleagues into our homes through digital means, sometimes unimaginable in many countries. Education and skills rapidly moving to online platforms, cleaning robots around us, and of course, a new wave of compassion and care for the millions who are less privileged than us. I spoke to the BBC a couple of weeks ago and they said, "What do you think of the pandemic?" And I said, I coined a new phrase called Prem-demic. It was actually when every Indian showered love on every other Indian, and every Indian went out of his way to help other Indians, irrespective of stature, status, caste, creed, or religion. Families have spent time together. Employees have remained steadfastly loyal. Jayant and I were talking about the Tata Group. The Tata Group ensured that not one single employee was furloughed. Not one single employee was laid off. Not to mention the overwhelming concern and consciousness that the world has exuded for planet Earth and its depleting resources. While economies have taken a hit, what I've seen and what all of us have seen, governments and international policymakers will now need to assess the full impact of workforce changes accelerated by COVID. We will need to measure the impact on labor participation rates, the rise of new norms of work, skill gaps, job role obsolescence, and changes in sectors. To cite an example, telemedicine is becoming an accepted reality, but do we have enough healthcare workers who are proficient in administering treatment through technology? CII, in collaboration with the World Economic Forum, had released a report on future of jobs in 2017 that examined the drivers of India's jobs creation and outlined potential scenarios that could plausibly guide our actions, both in terms of policy and in terms of business strategy for the next 10 to 15 years. Some recommendations were as follows, and I'll run through them quickly. Governments will need to develop a national strategy to enable technology adoption. Here I have to commend Narendra Modi and his vision of a digital India. The fact that Modi spoke about digital India in the manner that he did very early in his first tenure, speaks volumes of the fact that today that has come to help us rather than harm us. When it comes to industry, industry would need to adjust to remote working and probably change employer-employee contracts. We've seen that during COVID. On the individual level, reskilling and upskilling has emerged as a reality for all future workers. Stay relevant and reskill or upskill or stand the risk of losing a job. Employers have become more conscious, as also employees, not just about the contract that's on paper, but about the social contract they have with each other. Indian government, I have to say, normally found weak and wanting in most things, has been proactive in the fight against COVID. We've seen progressive labor reforms. We've seen the inclusion of the gig and platform workers in labor codes. To my mind, these reforms will help build a future of work that is safer, fairer, greener, and more resilient. CII, I've always maintained, has been the foremost business chamber in our country. It's a chamber which marries commerce and the cerebral. It has facilitated transformation of businesses through the following. CII has worked on recruit, train, and deploy, which is basically a model that addresses the potential loss of jobs. Digitally enabled training and upskilling was made available, especially for healthcare workers, banking and finance, logistics, and hospitality. Online assessment of talent pool, career counseling, placement facilitation. CII launched industry-led online Industry 4.0 training courses, for example, 4.0 technician, multi-rotor drone operators, Industry 4.0 electrician. It's also scaled up the national apprenticeship through CII members, working with schools to roll out vocational education at mid-level schooling. In sum, in my introduction, I would just like to lay before each one of you distinguished women and men, mostly men on the panel, sadly, but where I would like to place before you the following. Great societies and great nations always manage to wrestle opportunities out of adversity. Number two, where you marry resilience with strategy, you always benefit both as a society and as a country. I'm delighted that CII has chosen this theme at a very important juncture in the world's civilizational history. This is something that has been caste, creed, border neutral, what has happened with COVID. I'm more delighted to welcome each one of you, bright, distinguished people. So let me very quickly go through the profiles. Jayant Krishna, Group CEO of the UK India Business Council, provides strategic advisory, policy, advocacy, consultancy services. He has previously led several initiatives, both government and non-government, National Skills Development Corporation. Jayant also championed apprenticeship reforms in India and played a pivotal role in shaping the Apprentices Amendment Act. Prior to serving in government, Jayant was part of the House of Tata for over 2 decades. So may I ask Jayant to kick this off? Jayant, could you share your initial thoughts? And you have 7 to 8 minutes. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sohail, for some very kind words. Surely, the world is going through this pandemic, which is an unprecedented crisis by any reckoning, as per the data from the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. During the lockdown, the unemployment rate had touched double digits. But fortunately, I mean, as the lockdown, started getting opened up, the economy started opening up, things started improving, and even the migrant workers, which had gone back to villages, a very substantive number of them have gone back. So I think that's a good. So economy is bouncing back. The Q1 was very, very bad with a terrible minus 23.8% growth, negative growth, decline in the absolute size. of the economy. Q2, the official data is not out, but of course the decline would not be as much. And now Q3, which had festivals, Diwali, Christmas, and a lot of shopping, I think things should improve. Economists are still divided, whether the recovery would be a V shape, U shape, or L shape. And there are stories of gloom also, and stories of great hope, all coexist. The International Monetary Fund has said that the current crisis would be the worst after the Great Depression of the 30s in the last century. And for India, this is perhaps the first contraction of the economy in the absolute size since the reforms of 1991. KPMG has done a report, and they've said that almost 38 to 40 million jobs have been lost in tourism and hospitality itself, perhaps the sector which has been worst affected. Construction was anyway doing bad. It continues to be bad. But the only silver lining is this that Indian economy didn't have any major structural or systemic imbalance. So the bounce back is as much easier. As the pandemic's stimulant gets negated progressively. And another good thing is that, almost 2/3 of our economy, of our GDP, comes out of domestic consumption, which has not been affected. On the agriculture front, I think the Rabi crop was good. The agriculture growth is slightly higher than what you have in a normal year. The recent and you have to give points to Government of India to for using the pandemic as an opportunity to reform big time. Be it reforms on the banking and the credit side, or the MSME side, or even the recent agriculture reforms. The politics of the reforms notwithstanding. So I think some of the sectors have not been affected. For example, in IT and IT-enabled services. Just when the lockdown was announced, in that week itself, almost 96% people started working from home seamlessly. And now the estimates are almost 99% of the work, as per NASSCOM, happens seamlessly. So these are good. Manrega allocations have increased, so that's a good thing. Healthcare, where India is one of the lowest spenders among the, the bigger countries in the world, of just about 1.3% of our GDP. Is the public expenditure on healthcare, the government expenditure. The Prime Minister Modi has said so many times that, even before the pandemic, that it has to go up to 2.5% to 3% of GDP. And now this will only increase. And we have seen how this sector has boomed, of course, for reasons which are not very good. But I think the pandemic has also shown the inadequacy of our healthcare infrastructure in India, as in several other countries. So I think a lot of investment will happen there, and of course, pharma, the vaccine sector, and all these things, the medical equipment sector will get a boom. Even other sectors like work from home also gives an opportunity to a lot of people who had dropped out of the workforce, especially women, because of family responsibilities. They see it as an opportunity of getting hired again under flexi terms while they can work from home. So this is something good. And there are segments which are showing up where the job numbers are even better than what we had before the pandemic. For example, e-commerce. With the shift from conventional retail to the home delivery system, if you look at online education, which has become so popular, e-learning softwares, OTT, over-the-top media streaming services are booming. Work from home, facilitation solutions, project management solutions, virtual team facilitation solutions. They are all they've shown a huge increase, and so is the case with delivery fulfillment services, with the sanitization and cleaning services. Gig economy, also home deliveries have improved. Of course, the Olas and Ubers continue to suffer. So I think it's a very, if you look at technologies, some of the technologies like Internet of Things, big data, blockchain, 3D printing, machine learning, AI, we all know, robotics. I think this is automating the manufacturing side big time. And if at all during the pandemic, this automation drive has increased. Unfortunately, this would result in reduction in the headcount. Almost 25% of employers in India feel that their headcount would reduce, especially in the manufacturing sector, as per the survey done by Deloitte Global Human Capital. Internet of Things market is already about $15 billion in India, and it generates. So I think there are huge opportunities for equipment monitoring, process optimization, preventive and predictive, maintenance, advanced analytics. Big data is again, within a few years, the big data market would become almost, 16 billion in next 3-4 years time. So I think 3D printing is big time. Almost 25% companies have already embraced 3D printing in manufacturing to a lesser extent or a higher extent. I mean, of course, that varies. So I think the new type of jobs the big data will throw up would be like data engineer, machine learning scientist, business analytic specialists, BI solutions, data scientists, statisticians. I think these kind of roles will emerge, in much bigger numbers, than what they were earlier. And also, if you look at artificial intelligence and robotics, with the two technologies put together, job losses have happened. I mean, very often we get, this Foxconn, the Chinese factory example gets talked about, where robotics had resulted into a job loss of almost 60,000 workers. So I think there are possibilities, there are opportunities, but very, very clearly, under the Skill India program or other programs, it's very, very important to look at newer kind of opportunities. The traditional jobs are disappearing, and one is the COVID-induced new normal, and together with automation, which you see because of AI, robotics, Internet of Things, 3D printing, it calls for big time reskilling. That's very, very important. And today it's very important for India, as the entire world is looking at India, with a lot of hope, as because of the virus and because of China's geopolitical posturing in the region. And lot of companies, not only from UK but from other countries as well, they're looking at the possibility of relocating, their manufacturing supply chains to destinations other than China. And India is actually at the front-running country for that opportunity. And therefore, it's very, very important, especially in manufacturing, that we train people on these technologies big time, almost in a mission mode and on a war footing. Otherwise, what will happen? These companies, even while they're doing their due diligence, may find that the adequately skilled people are not there, and then it may get reflected in their their investment decisions. So I think these things are very, very critical. As I said, the new generation of jobs in terms of analytical and predictive skills, networking skills, software engineers, application developers. I think these are very important. Architects, cybersecurity experts. These are very important. So I will not hazard a guess whether all this will result into job losses or newer kind of jobs, and what will offset what. It's a difficult, because that scenario is still emerging. But one thing is very clearly, if we sit pretty and do not skill our people big time for these automation related technologies on one hand, and in the services sector from work from home options, leveraging technology, I think then the future would be bleak. But good story is, I was talking to somebody in NASSCOM. They have already launched through the IT and IT enabled services sector skill council, a lot of courses on these technologies. And I'm sure I think going forward there are a lot of opportunity. So I think it's a double-edged sword.
And we've gone way beyond time. All the initial comments. So let me quickly, because we've got a hard stop at 8. Let me get in Mr. Klaus Wahlberg, the DG of the Association of Swedish Engineering Industries. He's the Director General, organizes high technology companies of Swedish industries from a labor relations and political influence perspective. He's got extensive experience from the engineering businesses, mainly from ABB and Bombardier, and has also worked in the public sector in Sweden as CEO for a public transport authority, and has a great understanding of both the private as well as public sector. Klaus, all yours.
Thank you very much, Sohail. I sent a presentation. I don't know if I should share it or if you have it with you.
Yes.
There we are. Okay, very good. Will you manage, and I will just say pling when it's time to shift picture?
I'm not the host. I think the CII people will manage.
Yeah.
Yes, you will do that. Sir, let us know. We'll change the slide.
Hey, thank you very much. No, I called my contribution to this very interesting debate and seminar, the reflections on industry towards 2030 and beyond. The reason is that the COVID-19 as an overall pandemic and the key challenge for 2020, this has accelerated the trends and the tendencies that we already see now. So I will show you some of the basic backgrounds of this. And I would already now like to make a remark on what we just heard. Jobs will come and go, but the work skills and the activities that comprises, that builds up a job, that will be shifted differently. So the number of jobs will change, activities will be combined into new jobs. That's a very important takeaway from what we've just heard. Next picture, please. Ashish, maybe time to change. Hello. Could you please change the slide?
So just doing it is a technical error. Just a minute.
Right. Oh, okay.
Remember, Murphy was an Indian national.
No, well, I guess I got one slide right so far. There we are. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, now so short background of ourselves. We have a history since 1896. We represent about half of the Swedish industry as a whole, and you have a number of companies which are well-known brands like Ericsson, Scania, and so on as members. But they are the top of the iceberg. We have about 4,000 small and medium-sized enterprises as well. So I will talk on matters which covers both areas, both the globalized companies as well as the small and mid-sized companies. Please. Thank you. So these are the 6 mega trends that we see are affecting the industry, and they all came at the more or less same time in conjunction with the pandemic. One is sustainability. No company will go forward in any kind of sustainable, whether it's environmental or social sustainability or financial sustainability. That means the decarbonization, the transfer of energy source, and so on, all of this. And it's based upon the second element, the digitisation or digitalization, very important in order to drive the sustainable matter. And as a hang-up to the digitalization or as a threat, we have the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity can be its own seminar. It comprises all from various states which are targeting certain key industries, in order to gain competitive advantage, whether to steal intellectual property or whether to create harm and disturbances, or whether to affect like power grid systems and so on in order to create political instability. But it's becoming more and more an increasing problem, which is of course the flip side of the digitization area. And I will not mention any names of countries which are known to going in that direction. You probably know what they are. The fourth is the electrification and the very rapid tendency in electrifying what we can do. And it's of course affected by the carbon dioxide challenge and the global warming. Now, electrification has to be produced in a sustainable way, and here nuclear power will have to play a completely new role going forward as we see it. But the electrification goes in all areas. It's in housing, it is in transport, it is in various production methodologies, and it covers the whole area. We are facing transmission matters, we are facing sustainable matters there as well. The fifth element is autonomous vehicles and the way that autonomous vehicles will influence the way we live and create our cities for the future. Now, the return of the automotive sector is going to be very strong in the next years, given the fact of the pandemic and the impact it has had with individual transport. Strong recommendations are being placed by governments not to use public transport, and if you use public transport, be sure to wear a face mask. Now, the youth, the people who are millennials and so on, they want to have their own individual set of transport, and with new business models, like you lease your car and you pay like a subscription on the car, you're not owning your own set of wheels, you're actually leasing it when you need it. And finally, the automation side, where production can be sourced back to the home turf in a complete different manner. All of this requires a lot of good cooperation between the public and the private sector. Autonomous vehicles will not be a success unless you have government legislation and surveillance monitoring it, for example. So the industry will have the solutions, but the political ambitions will have to set the demands and the way forward. Then that's how it could work. So strategic innovation programs are key in order to have this result. All of this happens at the same time as we have a very severe recession based on the effect of the pandemic. So when we say we want to go back to the old normal, we will not return to the old normal. We will return to a new normal where these driving factors will play a vital role. Next. Thank you. And these are just some of the common manufacturing in Sweden, the way how we address the questions. It comes from the innovation side. We have the network of industrial companies with a global presence and the entire grid that they build up. The base for doing things together is very important. The broadband is very well established, so we had no problem of shifting jobs that could be dealt with from outside the office, were dealt with outside the office, very strong requirements, skilled population and a stable regulatory requirement. But we do lack the 5G network, we are delayed, and we are lacking in education. So the training side is the key challenge for having this result. It's not only new people coming in with skills, it's also the reskilling of staff. Next. So the focus that we have on the post-COVID is the sustainable digital transportation with the new policies to meet challenge in sustainable and circular economy. And here we find that all good legislation that we've had in the past may not be suitable for the future, especially if you use like subscription on the car. That has to be adopted. The strategic value chains. We saw on the industrial ecosystem significant disturbances as a consequence of the COVID-19. It took 2 days from that the Belgian government shut down Belgium before it affected the manufacturing of trucks in Volvo in Göteborg. We have the increasement in national systems for innovation. And then the resilience, which the pandemic also created, the key technologies that are necessary, which has to be ensured by ourselves or by international joint ventures. Next. Thanks to the values of the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution, where the digitization is the key, will create two different paths. One is the higher productivity in the manufacturing with the increased resource efficiency and quality increase, as well as the flexible customized manufacturing with increased resource efficiency and the new services. Technology as a service will fit. All of this requires the reskilling, and it's moved rapidly into this space as a fact of the pandemic, where we all of a sudden could not meet in the office in order to discuss things. We needed to bring it forward, and we were quick in adopting it. So the annual value that for Swedish economy this would be worked with when it fully implemented is a saving of about $15 billion if this is implemented. So it's an important and very, so we expect some contribution from government in order to make sure that this happens. Next. So to summarize the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution, which we are right into, we have the cloud-based service, data analysis, and the sensors. Sensors are key in measuring, which means that monitoring, surveillance, and performance of the products and services paid creates better margin and more efficient use of resources. The market offerings of platforms where the customer will be able to adopt himself to the solutions. Small batches, robotization is no longer needed for large short series, can be dealt with even individual products, and then the customized products. Production and work environment, we have the robotics, Internet of Things, the digital twins in order to bring solutions to the table much quicker and in more safe manner than before, and the 3D printing. And the after sales with the continuous updates. Automotives will no longer be one product, it will be continued, monitored, and updated frequently. Remote monitoring adds to the predictive maintenance, as well as the app services, which is also there in order to make more use of the investments. So all of this, next please. So which are the challenges and opportunities that we see? We have the connectivity, robust and high data transfer capability, manufacturing conditions, and the interoperability between systems. And then what is the opportunity for our members? It's a policy for the agile innovation systems, knowledge and competence development, which is we're driving strongly, the investment in knowledge, innovation, and research. As you see, we're moving into a brain society combined with the production and manufacturing side. Next. And that was it. Thank you for my time and contribution. Hope that it gave some insights. I think you're on mute, Sal.
May I now invite Peter Ree, of the Deputy Managing Director and the Corporate Vice President of Samsung. Mr. Ree leads integrated strategies to further Samsung's presence in the region. These initiatives cut across public policy, law, communications, sustainability, and partnerships. I've actually met Peter, and he's an outstanding professional and brings tremendous depth to Samsung and Samsung's brilliant contribution to the growth of India. He has an MBA from the Booth School of Business, the University of Chicago, deeply accomplished, as I said, executive with over 15 years of success, developing multifaceted global strategies for the high-tech industry that generate multi-billion-dollar revenue streams. And for those of you who don't know, Samsung is without a doubt the largest foreign direct investor in India. The way Samsung has touched lives in India is unimaginable, and I'm delighted that Peter is with us. Peter, over to you.
Sahil, thank you so much for the gracious introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank CII for the opportunity to speak to all the distinguished speakers today on this panel. So as one of the only speakers from a corporation, I'd like to talk about how the pandemic has accelerated the pace of digitization and how we as a corporation have responded to this unprecedented crisis so far. So this includes how we managed our employees, our partners, their employees, as well as the communities around us. Human behavior in so many different ways. So we're not going to the movie theaters, malls, or IPL matches and stadiums anymore. We're now watching Netflix, shopping more on Amazon. Like right now, we're on Zoom. I see my legal team colleagues attend courts from the office. It's amazing. So this transition to digital was coming, but no one ever thought that it would be so swift. So maybe now at least I think we're about 5 years ahead of its evolution. When COVID hit us, we went into a lockdown. We had an enormous problem. So imagine a $10 billion business, 70,000 employees, 200,000 retailers, 2 factories, 3 R&D centers, India's biggest mobile and TV maker, and also a company that set up the world's biggest 4G LTE network in India, all shutting down overnight. But tough times calls for tough decisions and smart decisions. We turned what initially looked like a huge challenge into a big opportunity. And our first priority was to ensure that employees and their families were safe. And I read the background note, and it's interesting to note that we followed many of the stakeholder principles laid out by the World Economic Forum's COVID action plan.
Peter, sorry, your video is off. We can't see you.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I think
Yeah, now we can see you.
yeah, I'm having some network problems. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. So at Samsung, unfortunately, we had a lot of these systems already set up, but possibly not at the scale required when the lockdowns hit. We had to ramp up enabling tech infrastructure very quickly in a matter of days. The sales organization had to understand of steps. So they had to find ways to a lot of train across able to quickly adapt to new ways of doing business. This included getting things done digitally. We also partnered with Facebook to train offline retailers and their employees to become part. Wait, I'm sorry. Can you see me?
No, now we can.
Okay. So we also partnered with Facebook to train offline retailers and their employees to become part of the online ecosystem and reach out to a larger base of consumers in a world. It's a video constantly turning off, but okay. So we enabled our retail partners to use the online medium as well to sell. And let me tell you a little bit about that. So we partnered with digital payments by consumers across the country with an option to buy Samsung smartphones, televisions, digital appliances from their neighborhood stores. And here the consumer uses the online medium to select and book a product. The delivery, however, happens from the nearest offline retailer. Retailers and consumers. The emphasis was on establishing digital-first journeys for consumers and on contactless operations, what we call untapped. And of course, during this time, many consumers shifted to e-commerce as well. Online retail has grown by over 100% if you compare pre and post-lockdown months. E-commerce has already democratized the shopping experience with access to more than 95% PIN codes. While digital is not a big phenomenon, it has definitely up by the pandemic. So according to one study, behaviors repeated over 66 days or more. Nearly 1 year way to treating COVID-19 as an inevitable part of life. Among the many new habits that we've acquired, the ones that leverage digital technology will likely persist even after the development of a vaccine.
Peter, we're kind of losing you a lot.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what the connection's not very good. But I want to tell you a little bit about our upskilling technology. We have a technology that is called Samsung U, or Samsung University, where thousands of courses from across domains, employees can basically access these courses to upskill and to get expertise in a lot of different areas. So here I'm losing a lot of the network here. So let me just end.
Yeah, can we come back to you a bit later then?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry.
Okay. So let me invite Roberto Suarez Santos, who's the Secretary General of the International Organization of Employers. Prior to joining the IOE, he was a lawyer by education, ILO Program Director for the promotion of the youth in the Maghreb region, previously worked at the Spanish Confederation of Employers Organizations, and was the Business Europe's Vice President for Labor Affairs. Roberto's experience extends to academia as well, having served as Associate Professor of European law at social universities. Roberto, please share your thoughts.
Thank you very much. I can be heard properly. I don't
Yes,
want
loud and clear.
First, I want to thank CII for this invitation. I really appreciate the fact that we are in this very reputed panel. Let me also refer to our work as IOE. Perhaps you don't know that IOE is the coordinating voice of business also within the ILO, the International Labour Organization. And this year is our centenary year. By the way, I know that CII has celebrated its 125th anniversary also this year. Perhaps not the best year to have a celebration, but at the same time, it's a year of, I'm going to use one word that has been used before the pandemic, which is a year of disruption. We have been very much involved in changing in all the debate that has to do with the future of work. What's the scenario of the workplace in the coming future, in the short term, in the middle term? And this discussion, I think, has been going on and on for already 5-7 years. We finished last year with a kind of centenary declaration of the ILO, the International Labour Organization, which I think has important elements on action-oriented policies. What is happening now in terms of change in the world of work, I have to say that was not unforeseen. It was not unpredicted. To some extent, and I think that previous speakers have referred to that, what we are witnessing is an accelerating driver. What we have not foreseen, no CEO of a single company would have foreseen that a health pandemic, would have created or speed up this process to this extent. We have referred to remote work. We are all, well, we are not all. Many of us are working remotely, not necessarily working from home. But I have to highlight that what we are witnessing is not just the transformation of the workplace, it's the transformation of the way we work. It's not about people working remotely now or in the coming years, but about how we will be working. The concept of working time, I don't know whether you are realizing that. The concept of working time and the concept of working place is changing dramatically. I'm not measuring you as an employer because of the number of hours, but because of your objectives. When you are working at home, when you are working remotely, necessarily you need to work with more autonomy. You need to be much more linked to objectives, to results, to deliverables. You need to disconnect also, but I need a new deal with you as an employee in the way you disconnect, because I don't have the same systems, the same procedures as I have in my working place. So that's transforming deeply in a profound way the workplace scenario, but also the work organization. Of course, those businesses that have already modified their business models will go in this path with more intensity, but that's driving all the other models of other business. Sometimes we refer very much to the change of the world of work, but at the end, what we are also referring to is the new business model, which has to do with a strong digital component. And I'm not going to refer that in depth because you have already referred to that. But I am going to give you some important data, which is that right now, in the last 9 months, in many economies, especially in the formal sector, of course, those companies that have the top level of performance are those who have at least in 1/3 of their activities digitalized entirely their products and services. And that means that they had a skilled strategy. It's not just digitalizing some activities, it's a strategy as a whole, which is focused and have changed quickly the model. The question is, and the challenge is that the human resources policies that we have now, regulations, working time regulations, workplace regulations, social security system, because more and more we see workers, individual and self-employees or working remotely, regulations of employment, social security and social protection regulations, but also international cooperation and global policies are simply not up to the new reality. It's a big challenge, and we have to face it. We have a conversation last week with the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohamed, and he also highlighted something which is also important. We think that all these changes is coming quickly, which is true and is here with us, but we also have to bear in mind what we are not as connected as we think we are. 47% of the population worldwide do not have access to internet. 60% of the total occupied population is in the informal sector, and in countries, I know that in countries like India, that goes up. And there you don't have the access to this new driver of success that we are witnessing. Even those who have access to internet do not have the digital skills that are needed. If you look in not just in developing economies, but also in developed economies, what we call the adult illiteracy, you will be surprised. I mean, the high level of illiteracy to access and to handle digital tools is quite striking. ILO has just recently identified how many workplaces right now can be done remotely, how many activities, how many occupations. And the figure is relatively low. It's a little bit surprising. It's just 18% of workers across the globe work. So to sum up, we have to face a reality in which we see a strong speed change in the way we do business, in the way we work, but at the same time a reality with a huge number of individuals that do not have access to internet, not access to high wideband, for instance, no digital skills. So this is the other speed up process that we need to undertake in the very short-term basis. And that's why IOE is very much committed to work with business and employees organizations to speed up this process at the ground level. And that has to do also with the skills. Something that we have been discussing before the pandemic is what happens with the skills that are needed. The skills updating and reskilling has been there for already 200 years, 150, since the Industrial Revolution. We all know that we'll need more people with IT skills, with the STEM skills. Now we have the health sector, the care sector in developed economies, which will be much more important. At the same time, the qualitative element that we see now is that more and more you have work that will be done by machines because of artificial intelligence, etc. Artificial intelligence per se is not something so new. What is new is the highest speed of apprenticeship, highest speed of learning that machines have, which means, and that's also another data that is important, that now business leaders, business managers find difficult to foresee the skills that are needed in 3 years' time. According to an IOE survey that we did with the ILO, now, and it was a survey that we did in many areas of the world, in Brazil, in the USA, but also in Asia, in developing economies. And clearly, one of the elements that came out of this survey is that the capacity to predict the skills that are needed goes in a short-term timing, 3 years, whereas before it has 5 years, etc. In practical terms, that means that I am not longer able to predict what are the skills needed, but I have to learn quickly. And there's a new concept, which is learnability, which is there and which will be remaining as a driver of success. If I am now getting out of my organization as Roberto, will I be able to catch up with new IT knowledge, IT skills, for instance? If I have this capacity to learn quickly, I will be much more successful, and that will make a huge difference. And on the other side, you will have more and more jobs which cannot be replaced by machines. And that has to do with human skills, what we call before soft skills, badly called soft skills, human skills that machines cannot do, and that complement very much the technical skills. My capacity to anticipate, my capacity, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the project management, the collaboration skills, teamwork, a global mindset, stress management, emotional intelligence, that's coming very clearly, and we have already some data in developed economies on how occupations with these skills are more and more up in the market. All that means a new different mindsets and a responsibility, a co-responsibility. And one of the areas in which we are also working, of course, has to do on how we anticipate this new mindset, and we will be more than willing to support and to work together with CII and other partners to get there. I would just stop here. I know that there was a question on migration. I can't elaborate that much more, but I would think that it would be important also to give time for the questions and answers. And thank you again for your time. You're in mute, Sua.
May I now invite Yohei Shibasaki, the founder and CEO of the Fourth Valley Concierge Corporation, Japan. After graduating from Sophia University, Tokyo, Mr. Shibasaki joined Sony and conducted business with global companies such as Samsung, Motorola, and Nokia. He established Fourth Valley Concierge Corporation in a small room in Tokyo in 2007. And today their database has grown to more than 200,000 registrants from approximately 130 countries. He's also visiting lecturer of Sophia University. He has received recognition like Young Global Leaders, the World Economic Forum 2013. He's also a committee member of the Foreign Employment Policy Survey Project. Shibasaki-san, tell us what you think.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. First of all, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to this wonderful opportunity, and I'm very honored to speak here. So today I would like to talk about the following. Yeah. So let's start. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is my company in Japan, Tokyo. Yeah, so today I would like to talk about very briefly about our company and the foreign labor market in Japan, and Japan strongly welcomes global talent. Okay, next slide, please. So very shortly about our company. So I established this company 13 years ago, and Mr. Ideya, one of our advisor, used to be the CEO of Sony, and we have around 100 employees and bringing talents from around 30 countries, mainly to Japan or Singapore and other developed countries. Next slide, please. And we have lots of overseas branches and global partners. And our main service is to support the young talents in developing countries and bring them to Japan or Singapore. So we are providing a global career opportunity to the young people in developing countries, and mainly in Asia, Southeast Asia and South Asia. So around 30 countries and more than 700 universities we are collaborating. And right after graduation, we are bringing them to Japan or Singapore or other countries. Next, please. Yeah. And our main service is recruiting and supporting the job hunting, like cross-borderly. And we also have the language and skill training center in several countries. So we are supporting the young people in developing countries to gain skills and get a job in developed countries. That's our main service. Next slide, please. Our main sponsor is like Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, NEC, the top Japanese leading companies, or Rakuten, Yahoo, Line, the top leading IT companies in Japan, and also the private sectors of government is also our sponsor. So this is our main sponsor. Next slide, please. So our relationships with India. I'm flying to India around 4 or 5 times a year. We have strong relation with IITs, and hundreds of IIT graduates are now working in Japan through our support, mainly in the top leading Japanese companies. And we are also involved in the both countries like conference. So we are deeply connected to like India. Next slide, please. So how about the foreign labor market in Japan? So maybe all of you will be surprised to see my comments next. So as everyone knows, Japan is drastically aging country with decreasing population. But on the other hand, the number of foreign workers in Japan is increasing very rapidly, drastically. Next slide, please. Can you believe that we are the country that is most increasing, a country that is increasing the foreign employee the most strongly in the world? So in 5 years, from 2014 to 2019, the number of foreign people working in Japan is like more than double. And as you can see in the right side, the number of companies accepting foreigners is like 2.5 times in these 10 years. So number of babies born is like less than half. It's about 1/3 to compare with like 40 years ago. So can you believe that number of babies were born in last year? It was like 0.8 million, but my generation there was more than 2 million babies. Yeah, so we are losing our population very drastically, rapidly. But on the other hand, we are increasing foreign people, very dramatically. Next slide, please. So Japan is in a serious situation in terms of human resources, and is a country that welcomes global talent in the world. Yeah. Next slide, please. This shows the number of blue one is blue collar worker people in Japan, and red one is like white collar numbers of white collar people in Japan. So after Lehman shock or the big earthquake, still the number of foreign people working in Japan in white collar, blue collar both is drastically increasing. Next slide, please. So how about Indian people in Japan? So left side, 3 million people living in Japan, and 2 million people working in Japan as a foreign people. So India occupies 1% in foreign residents. This is 40,000 Indian people living in Japan now out of 3 million. But as you can see, China is almost 30%, Korea 15%, Vietnam 40%, 14%. So India 1%. Don't you think it's too small? And the right side, 270,000 is the number of white people who have the working white collar visa in Japan. So the rate of Indian people is 3.5%, much higher than the foreign rate of foreign residents. So that shows lots of Indian people are recruited to Japan because they have a highly like IT skills. So in IT industry, Indian people are very popular in Japan. Okay, it's still 33% of the white collar people is in China, and also 10% from Korea. So still we can see that to less Indian people, we need more Indian people to come to Japan. Next slide, please. And especially in the IT sector, it's the most we are facing a most tough situation. So in terms of labor shortage, IT, nursing, and construction are the biggest field that lacks people. And in Japan, in IT, it is said that Japan will see approximately 800,000 shortage in IT engineers in 2030. And at this moment, 2020, we already lack 400,000 IT engineers. So what will be the solution? Yes, we need more like overseas talent to come to Japan. Okay, next, please. So Japan is a country that welcomes global talent in the world. Almost like very few people know this, but a serious labor shortage in Japan. So the company's recruiting is drastically changing. We cannot secure people only by Japanese nationality. So Japanese companies are more eager to hire from all over the world and bringing them to Japanese headquarters, not hiring them in the subsidiary, bringing them to Japan. And there's high approval rate of working visa. So in these 10 years, we have never like failed to get the working visa for our for the talents for our clients. So Japan is the easiest country to get the working visa for white collar, blue collar, in any field. So that's a real okay. And at this moment, 400,000 people stopped at border. Yeah. So after the COVID will be settled, we will face a very serious labor shortage situation. So we already have a big demand from Japanese companies to hire people from like Asia again. Next, please. So learnings from COVID in Japan is the last slide, but JobTra is our new service that we would like to appeal to Indian government. So it's a global opportunity shifting from people transfer to job transfer. Next slide, please. What we are proceeding with Indian private sector is so the new types of employment is created under COVID situation in Japan. So IT engineers they no more work in the office. They work remotely. So what's the difference between working remotely in Tokyo or from Delhi? So IT engineers can work for Japanese headquarters remotely from their own country. So next slide, please. The Japanese companies are now starting to hire people not to Japan but remotely. For example, Indian guys in Delhi, Bangalore, they don't need to come to Japan. They can get the job, business from Japanese headquarters remotely, staying in their own country. So this is our new service that we are proceeding now. Last slide, next. Okay, so traditional way of physically working in Japan, bringing them to Japan, that was our main service, but we are shifting to new service model. So new service, remotely working for Japanese companies in Japan and India with the best target. So Japan is seen as one of the society that is most reluctant to change, but COVID has opened up the door for us. So of course it's a worst pandemic worldwide, but we need to look forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shibasaki-san. Given the imperatives of time, we're at 7:35, and we have about 25 minutes to wrap up. I'm going to do a quick circle of questions to each one of you. Let me start with Jayant. Given your experience, what do you think would be your top 3 insights on digitization of jobs post-COVID? And how do you think corporations can prepare themselves to bridge the talent gap if it exists? My appeal would be to keep the answer precise and not more than 4 to 5 minutes, just for time. Jayant.
Right. So the first thing would be that, the skills that you learned at the university will make sure that you would lose your job within a few years of getting one. So one has to get into the lifelong learning mode. There is no other way. Whichever sector of the economy one is in. That's first. Second is the digital skills, especially on the manufacturing side, like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data analytics, 3D printing, robotics. These have to be acquired on a war footing. For a country like India, there is no other way. If we have to our space in the manufacturing universe, if we have to leverage the anti-China sentiments, I think there is no other way. And third is, of course, the best form of learning skill is apprenticeship. It's a very liberal law and regime in the country today. And you must embrace and you have to soil your hands and learn. That's the best way, because training partners in institutions, no matter what investments they make, they can never replicate the shop floor in a lab, in a classroom context. The German dual system, which people talk about, the system closest in India to that is the apprenticeship system. So these three things would be my top three priorities, Sohail.
Excellent, outstanding, and I think you beautifully captured the nub of the issue. Let me go quickly to Klaus Wahlberg. Sweden is at the forefront of innovation. You guys award the Nobel Prize, and yet there's a reluctance to impose the wearing of face masks, other drastic measures. Sweden has largely relied on voluntary social distancing. What do you think is the reason for this? I mean, I can understand Nordic liberalism, but where do you see things working in the next 6 to 8 months?
I would say that the experiences we've got. Sorry?
I said, especially during these times.
Yes.
I wish we had Nordic spirit, but.
Yeah, first of all, the adoption of the Swedish way of addressing the COVID-19 is very much based on what is working in Swedish character. We are used to social distancing because we are quite few people on an enormously vast area. It lives more people in Delhi than it does in Sweden. So keeping distance is not an issue. We said 2 meter distance. Well, it's going to be good when we can go back to our 5 meter distance, because that's what's common. Anyway, it's jokingly. What we've seen on the face mask is really it's being implemented on a voluntary basis because we don't have the legislation way of shutting down society as a whole. We have used the different legislative rooms where you need permission, like football games, like concerts. There they have imposed it. But the way to work and really to get an acceptance of measures, you need to persuade people. We are being referred to as the Japanese of the North, sorry, Mr. Shibasaki, but it means we talk ourselves into consensus. And the consensus approach on what we do is a much stronger way of achieving an objective than imposing solutions on top of it. So that's why the model of addressing the COVID-19 is slightly different. Has it been successful? Yes and no. It has not been successful in terms of protecting the elderly at the elderly care centers, because there was a difference of responsibility which was not objectively managed. For industry and manufacturing and economy viewpoint, industry is working like there was no tomorrow because it's enormous pressure at the moment. The bounce back was very strong, so we don't see a V shape, we see a double V shape. So we were economy-wise, we saw the recession coming in hospitality, in transport, in airline. That's where you see restaurants, for example. But in industry, we were not affected. On the contrary, some of our member companies are working like they've never worked harder. So it's a very mutual pick. And I think that the way that this was resolved is really, government received acceptance for their strategy. Then people themselves decided to take steps on putting face masks on. I do it when I'm in public transport, for example.
Let me get to Peter very quickly. Peter, I hope your network is better. Now, Samsung just completed a quarter of a century in India on the 8th of December. And you folks unveiled a new vision. You called it Powering Digital India, which must have made the Prime Minister extremely happy, as he should be, aimed at students. Now, I have two very quick questions to ask you, and you can elaborate on them. How does it include students, number one? And number two, post-COVID, as even Jayant touched upon it, as the digitization of jobs takes place at an accelerated pace, How is Samsung recalibrating and resetting itself to bridge the talent gap and help employees in reskilling or upskilling? Please, Peter.
So we have been in India for a quarter of a century, and this month we have celebrated 25 years in India. We started very humbly in 1995 with 6 million in revenue, and we are now a $10 billion enterprise that cuts across multiple products such as the mobile handset, consumer electronics, network systems, and we have now built one of the biggest operational hubs within Samsung Electronics. And so the R&D operations that we have in Bangalore as well as in Delhi are the third biggest in the world for Samsung, even bigger, the next biggest after Korea. We've also built the biggest mobile handset factory in Noida, where the honorable minister and also the president of Korea inaugurated about 2 years ago. So right now we have over the last 5 years we had a vision of manufacturing for India, and we feel that we have enabled that for the government of India. The handset manufacturing has become one of the biggest sectors in the world for India. And now we feel like we need to have a new bold vision. And so we have launched Powering Digital India. And that what that really represents is a ongoing commitment to India in various areas that we think are very important for India, which includes citizenship, giving back to various societies, as well as a refreshed R&D strategy, and also manufacturing in key sectors such as upstream manufacturing capability, bringing the components into India as well. As far as your questions regarding the youth, we have an exciting new program that we will launch very soon that will look to build the innovation capabilities for India. And we have developed this program to focus on major societal issues, trying to get innovation in the agricultural
Outstanding.
healthcare.
Let me give you some free marketing advice. Call the program Indovate. It basically is India Innovates, and it's innovation to provide Indian solutions. This is my contribution through CII to Samsung. Call it Samsung Presents Indovate. Everyone loves the country name as far as possible. Please proceed. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. So no, we actually, I wanted to, well, it's a global program called Solve for Tomorrow. Several regions like the U.S. where we've targeted, junior high school students to solve STEM-related issues. But we've adapted that program into the India context, focused more on the top societal issues for India, such as agriculture, such as environment, etc. And so we will work with IITs to help the students develop programs along those lines. And regarding your second question was on R&D or how we will.
Yeah, how you're bridging the talent gap between and helping employees to reskill and upskill.
Yes. So in our Bangalore R&D operations, we have a program called PRISM, which is basically bringing in students from various communities and assigning a mentor and assigning different projects to them while they're still in school so that they can understand key technologies. And so when they get into the industry, they will be prepared. And so this is one of our key strategies going forward.
Excellent. I now come very quickly to Mr. Santos, to Roberto Suarez Santos. My concern as a citizen of the world is when digitization happens, the perception and the fear is it will lead to a loss of jobs. It will lead to a loss of livelihood, therefore. Employee-employer ratios will be severely impacted. You sit at the IOE, which is the employers, summit, as it were. How do you address this issue? And how do you address this paradox that while the world must embrace technology, we must embrace digitization, we also have to be conscious and mindful of our social compact with humanity? And how will we marry these two? Roberto.
Well, we are very bad. We are very bad at assessing the progress that we have undertaken. Very bad, and especially democracies, I have to say. And I know that India is a big democracy. I really, this fear trend is not the first time that it comes. If you go back to the first industrial revolution, this fear already existed because of the new machines to make the sewer machines that were going to replace the traditional textile system was going to replace many jobs. And this exact same fear came to the debate that we have already 4 or 5 years ago. And there were predictions of job loss, which were very, very negative in terms of the net loss of employment. That was already there. And then the predictions, new predictions came referring to new opportunities. And precisely what I said before, on the social skills area, the opportunities are huge, are immense. Let me also tell you, something that we forgot is many individuals in the informal sector are already benefiting because of the digital access. They are living out of poverty because they are providing services that they never imagined, even services that they provide to foreign providers. So there is a case, a good business case of leveraging, of using and linking the digital tools for the informal sector to become formal. And that's the agenda that we need to push strongly. There is also a case for learning in a cheaper manner, in a much more accessible manner, and perhaps less formalized manner, but with some important results already. We refer to upskilling and reskilling, but at the end of the day, you now have access to many programs from very reputed universities and many reputed training centers abroad because of the digitalized access of many individuals. In order to have this as a driver source of social cohesion, what you need is to invest in infrastructure, to invest also in skills, digital skills, literacy, and you need also to more importantly to invest in mentality. The idea that I think that Mr. Krishna said, that at the end of the day, what you need is to have a kind of core responsibility from all of us, and having a mentality to reskill yourself on a regular basis. That would be critical. That's what we see as a successful driver in many economies that are doing well on that area. And I can give you the examples of these countries. I don't like to mention countries because then you get also sometimes in programs, but I can mention them if it's necessary. I want to take more time.
You must never say anything that will implicate you.
I learned that already when I started working here.
The truth always implicates you. Very quickly, let me go to Shibasaki-san. I love the way we have to say san. It's almost ethereal respect. It's worldly. Here we say saint, there you say san. But, I want to kind of merge some of the issues that are in my head. Japan has used robotics for ages, which has obviously had an impact on human employment. And now you in your company are doing some amazing work where you're consulting multinationals, you're working with universities, you're preparing for a new charter of employment of jobs. How do you see this from where you stand moving forward? What do you think are the opportunities? What are the pitfalls?
You mean about the universities?
Yeah.
Of Japan?
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, the universities of Japan still sticking to like only academic issues. So they're not interested in like business. There's a lot of vocational schools in Japan now. So they are like educating talents for industry, but universities, unfortunately, like no big change. That's our real situation.
No, but from where you come, in terms of you've had a past in Japan where there has been a lot of focus, a lot of dependency on robotics, where you've eliminated
Robotics, yes.
human intervention. So how does that work as you go forward?
Yeah. Now, some robots like making takoyaki, Japanese like soul food and others. So yeah, some robotics are starting to replace like human beings, people, but not yet a drastic change yet.
So you don't think it will impair the process of digitization for human jobs, and both will coexist? Is that what you're saying?
In some field, yes, I think they will replace, especially the nursing or caring, yeah, in the hospitals, because we are becoming a like aging society. Them robots or using robotics, it's a big chance. But others, like self-driving autonomous cars in that field, drastically change. But robotics, I'm not so like familiar with that issues yet. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've got about 8 minutes left, and I need to say the following. On behalf of CII, I want to thank each one of you. To my mind, we've had a very robust conversation. At times, it is significant because it actually portends the world as we see it, and it's not entirely a cozy picture. The point that Jayant made in his opening remarks, the points that Peter, that Shibasaki-san, that Carl, that Roberto made, actually point to a world where the world order or the way we imagine the world will change. So we're not looking at a predictable world order. We're not looking at predictable ways of doing business. We are not looking at predictable relationships either. So almost everything that we took for granted is under a microscope, as it should be. So I thank you for the comments that each one of you made, and I'm delighted that CII took upon itself to host this session with a topic such as this. And I wish each one of you well. And I hope and pray that your families and you stay safe, that the next year will be better than this, that we will, as humanity, as a human race, understand the powers of resilience, but more importantly, the powers of compassion. I think what we have learned in this world today is that you may be whoever you are, but if empathy and compassion don't drive who you are, then all is lost. And we have seen that in political leadership, we've seen that in economic leadership. I'm delighted that each one of you gentlemen does the amazing work that you do. You do it with the passion that you do it with, the panache, and more importantly, and that to my mind is the most significant thing, you do it with sensitivity. You do it with care. Human beings, when faced with the kind of fear we've been faced with, we are at our most fragile. We don't need hand holding. We don't need hand me downs. We need empathy. We need understanding. And we need a sense of optimism. Optimism which is laced with action, and optimism which is fueled by understanding. On that note, we have 6 more minutes, but that's 6 more minutes to have a cup of tea or enjoy yourself. And all I can say is good night from Delhi. Wherever you are, enjoy your holidays. Merry Christmas. And may we enter newer, brighter, and more hopeful pastures. In true Indian tradition, all I can say is namaste. And Carl, this is another way of us socially distancing ourselves when we don't want to touch the other chap's hands. God bless you. Namaste. Thank you.
God bless. God bless.
Thank you, Bhavna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.